Hello, everybody. Oh, it's so lovely to be back on the podcast. I have a very inspirational lady joining me today. She is a big Milspo fan. She is a huge part of the Milspo community. She is an inner circle member. She has her own business, I think maybe two. She is an RAF wife, a mum, and just a generally brilliant person. So I'm really excited to share her story with you. Hello, Emily. How are you today?
Hello, Jess. I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Oh, you're so welcome. We're going to have a great chat. So, the first question, the obvious one, is please could you introduce yourself and what you do?
Yes, so I'm Emily Bailey, and my main business is Just Tourism. I am a sustainable tourism consultant, so I work with tour operators on a business to business basis to create their sustainable tourism strategies.
Um,
And I also have Just Adventure, which is a walking, guided walking business, which is neglected a little bit.
Oh, no, it's perfect. It's all about the juggle. So, I think the most obvious question is what is sustainable tourism?
Oh, that's the big, massive question. What is sustainable tourism? Sustainable means making things no worse today, sorry, no worse tomorrow than it is today. So, sustainable tourism is making sure that tourism is good for the people, planet, and the economy. Yeah, ensuring that we look at carbon emissions and reduce those. We make sure that communities are benefiting from tourism, that we're not burdening communities or destinations with too many tourists, and making sure that those people that are in the tourism industry are um, being prosperous and having good jobs.
So, that must be quite a fine balance because tourism, internationally, especially for us in the UK, must have a huge effect, both positively and negatively, on traveling abroad, going to see things. How is that balance working currently, and why is it important that it makes a difference?
Yeah, so obviously you have to fly most places. So carbon emissions are a big issue. So it's about balancing the um, carbon emissions and thinking about where you're going, how long you're going for, can you get there by another means? Like if it's Europe, can you get there by train? And then once you're on the or in the destination on the ground, how you're spending your money, where you're staying, are those hotels doing good things for the environment? Are they employing local people? Where's the food coming from? Yeah, it's trying to balance it, but that is the big issue that yeah, carbon emissions until airlines get to net zero, which they probably won't. Yeah, it's all about sort of the balancing and just being more aware about how you're spending your money once you're in destination as well.
And that's what you do with companies, isn't it?
Yes, yes. So I would look at their itineraries and look to see if there's a better way of getting somewhere, and then working with them to have a look at their excursions and make sure that they are locally owned, locally operated, that they're immersive and they have good cultural exchange, and become more memorable as well. It's much better to go on a city tour and do a cooking class while you're there or do a photography workshop, because that's the bit that you're going to remember, not just the when you see it in London following around somebody with an umbrella and just having things pointed at you. That's quite a passive experience, whereas if you get a bit more immersive, then you're going to learn more, enjoy it more, and want to do more things like that in the future.
And why focus? You talked at the start a little bit about you also have your adventure travel thing. So why, how did you get there? Why is it all about tourism? Why is it adventure tourism? Because I know that we've spoken previously because I helped you with your branding. How did you get to this for somebody that like me, I go on lots of love a holiday. I now have a toddler, so I don't go very often, but I do love a holiday, but I've never considered anything sustainable at all. I've never really considered the better way of doing it. I very much just follow the crowd. We go on a few adventure holidays. My husband will be sniggering when he listens to this. We've done Machu Picchu and we've done all over the place. Goodness, back in the day. This is pre-child. His idea of adventure is very different to my idea of adventure, but we can call it adventure holidays. Why, how did you get into that? Why is that the niche and the line that you've fallen along?
Yeah, so I've been in the adventure tourism sector for over 20 years. I started off with one of the biggest adventure tour operators in the UK, which is Explore. And I worked for them for 8 years, doing mainly sales, product development for their tailor-made department, and organising school trips. So their ethos and the adventure sector as a whole has always been to have responsible tourism, which has now evolved into sort of sustainable tourism. And it's no longer a sector, it's more of a tour operators having to do it, not having to do it, but wanting to do it. And it was interesting what you said about you don't even think about it. That should be the way. You shouldn't have to think about it. It should already be what you're being presented with by the tour operator should be the sustainable option. It's not happening yet all over. So yeah, so back to how I got here. I worked for Explore, worked for the I sat next to the responsible tourism manager for a very long time. So a lot of the information kind of rubbed off on me. And then I actually met my husband on an Explore tour. So that was the end of that because he's in the RAF. And then I went on to do various jobs. You know what it's like jumping around different jobs. And then we landed up in Lincolnshire where there are no adventure tour operators at all. So after a few months, I managed to get a job with a small marketing agency called the Adventure Connection, which is working on a business to business level of introducing small overseas ground agents to the big UK tour operators. Most of them, again, have a very sustainable, responsible ethos. And that was kind of the area that I really wanted to focus on. I was working from home, hybrid, not even hybrid, just remotely since 2017, so way before it became the norm. And then obviously COVID hit, which for the travel industry was just the worst thing that could happen. You know, we've had ash clouds and civil unrest and everything that upsets the travel industry, but to just have the industry switched off basically for over a year was pretty horrendous. So at that point, I decided, right, this is where I'm going to start learning more about sustainable tourism. I went and did a master's and then set up Just Tourism off the back of that. Essentially, so I can be a bit more flexible, take my business with me wherever we go.
What was your master's in?
Sustainable tourism.
Well done. Goodness me. Um, this makes me think back to I did a lovely podcast episode with Emma Henderson, who is ex-commercial pilot, married to RAF navigator, I think off the top of my head. Either way, it's a brilliant episode. You should go back and listen to it. And we talked a lot about the price of flights and the fact that it's just not sustainable in both ways, in the traditional sense of the word and in the saving the world sustainable thing, and how that's a real problem. The fact that we've been so used to cheap holidays. We've always been able to just, pop over to Spain for 99 pence plus a lot of tax. And that's what we've expected. That's the way it's always been. That's what we expect. Do you think, I mean, I get the impression that making things sustainable and looking after the world sounds a little bit expensive. Is that the reality? Is that what's happened?
No, I don't think it is necessarily. If you think of energy saving, for a hotel to reduce its energy consumption, manage its waste better, not be buying as many single-use items, that's actually going to bring their overheads down. So in theory, should make it cheaper to stay there. Probably wouldn't, but some hotels will be able to reduce their costs. Flying, I think yeah, we've got so used to the whole flying for nothing, just paying the tax, that that I think will continue. I don't think it's as prevalent since COVID, because the cost of fuel and everything's gone up. Airlines inevitably have lots of debt to pay back over that time where they couldn't operate. So I don't think that sustainable tourism is necessarily more expensive, um, because there are ways of making it affordable. And we kind of almost need to design out the non-sustainable side of tourism and make sure that it's just the norm. Um, yeah, but I think you would probably, if you looked at a hotel at the moment that says it's sustainable, you might find that it is more than one that's not. But over time, I think that will change.
Yeah, it needs to become the norm. And I think it's definitely the language is changing and the awareness of it all is changing. So we just thought about the financial side. What about we're just as a human race, all of us, I'm just generalizing massively here. We're just kind of a little bit busy and not we just want the quick, simple solution to everything. We're so used to it. We get everything on demand. That's what we want.
Yeah.
How would you going forward for somebody who's not really considered like me? Like I said, I just book up, we just book a holiday and off we go. Is there anything we should be looking out for when we choose to go abroad or stay at home that can mean that we just pick the right options? Or is there anything we should be promoting and saying to travel agents or the people that we talk to about booking holidays? Is there a system in place? Is it regulated? What should we be looking for?
Yeah, so there's not much regulation. Well, Europe has some good laws coming in about um, carbon emissions, and actually things like whether you can say the word sustainable or not. There's a whole debate about what you can and can't say surrounding sustainability and your impact on the environment. So that the language will change again, I think, in the next few years. But in terms of what a customer can look for, so if you look at some of the big booking platforms where most people would book their holidays, quite often things are tagged with a sustainable option. If you're thinking about doing a city break within Europe, have a look at getting there by train. And once you're through the tunnel, the train system's way better than it is on this side. So like Paris, Amsterdam, all those sort of nice weekend break places, just make the train your default option. Um, Try and stay in locally owned and owner managed accommodation, which can be just as good, if not better, than chain hotels because you get a very different experience. Um, find a tour guide if you're on a city tour, or if you want to do a boat trip or something, find a really locally owned and run um, experience. And for some of the larger tour operators, particularly in the adventure sector, tour operators are starting to carbon label trips, so you can see how much carbon is being used within those trips. And yeah, so think about the carbon labels and B Corp. Quite a few companies are starting to do B Corp, which basically says they're a better business. And ask the question as well. Ask them if they've got sustainability policy. Go on, if you're looking at a website, just have a little look around, see if there's sustainability pages and have a look. Because if they've written a sustainability page, they are likely to be thinking about sustainability.
Brilliant.
But actually, it shouldn't be you that's thinking about it. It should be the tour operator, and they should be just presenting you with the best option.
Yeah. That's what we're aiming for. That's what we need because we
Yeah.
are busy people. We just need a holiday. Sorry, I feel like this is a quiz. Emily, sorry, I am pinning you down and trying to get all the information out of you for this podcast. As you know, we've got Milspo, so there's a lot of business owners listening, and we've talked about this previously. We did a workshop for business owners who have a responsibility as well to be more sustainable. Are there any ways that they can make sure that their own business is just a little bit happier for the world?
Yeah, I think in the Milspo network, there's a lot of people doing a lot of good things already. If you're a product business, think about what you're sending things in. Is it recycled, recyclable, plastic-free tape? It's actually quite strong. So, um, and yeah, just thinking about what you're using as what you're consuming, what your product is. Can you use better materials in your product? When you're traveling for business, do you need to go by plane? Can you go by train or car? Does that meeting need to be in person? Can we do it over Zoom? I know we're all a bit zoomed out after a few years, but it can save you time and money. Yeah, there's quite a few things you can do. If you're a sort of medium-sized business, maybe have a look at the B Corp assessment, because that can direct you down the right path. I want to say, think about your energy consumption and emissions. I know lots of the Milspo network are in quarters, so we don't have much control over our insulation. But it could be like, I've got a little heater in my office rather than heating the whole house. I just heat my office. And thinking about, yeah, who's hosting your website, how many emails you're sending in a day. Yeah, just little things that do make quite a big difference.
Perfect. Yes, I am in a military marine quarter, but the heat is just flying out through the cracks. It's cost me a fortune, but it's amazing, isn't it? How money does start to make a difference to how you think about things.
Yes, definitely.
So what about the negative people who've decided, you know what, it's just too late. The world is ending. It's too late. I'm too busy. Why bother?
Oh, why bother? I often think this. Now, I've got a child, and I don't want him living in the UK when it's 40 degrees all summer, and it's then boring, not boring, but it's then not a pleasant place to be. Um, and I do think that we should all have a responsibility for looking after our planet. Um, but yeah, why? Because there's future generations. And people always say, not people, a few people say, it's not the planet that's going to be wiped out, it's the people. The planet will regenerate. It's going to be us that aren't on it anymore. And with the way that the progression of temperature rising, we really need to just make those small changes now, and everyone take a little bit of responsibility um, for it. And if everybody makes a few changes that works for them, then we can make big changes. But yeah, don't know what to say to the people who think so. Why bother?
So
Politely.
I know, because we do, we have such a responsibility, and it's just a shame that we've got to this point, but we're going to drag it back to something a bit more positive.
Good.
But yeah, little changes. If everybody made just some little, I know that I sound like the government and eat five a day and walk 10,000 steps, but if everybody just tried a little bit harder, it would make it a little bit easier. And right, we'll move away from the apocalypse now. To go back to tourism, talking about holidays and places you visited, where's the best place you've ever been to?
Oh, that's such a hard question. So I managed to get to every continent on the planet by the time I was 29. So um, now I want to say Antarctica as my favourite place in the world. There's a bit of chat in the industry at the moment whether we should or shouldn't go there. Personally, I think it's a very elite destination because of the price of getting there. The carbon burn to get there and on the cruise is very high. However, I think the mindset change of the people that go there and coming back and talking about this pristine, incredible environment, it really is the poster child of why we need to look after the planet. And for me, it really did push me towards thinking about sustainability. And well, sustainability wasn't a word when I went, but thinking more about things that I could change to make sure that Antarctica can still be there. And that was things like milk bottles. I've used milk bottles for I was going to say forever, but there was a time when we couldn't get milk bottles. But I get a milkman every few days. When I had my son, I used cloth nappies rather than the disposable nappies. So there's little changes, and I do think now that that was because I went to somewhere and experienced this incredible place that really needs us to look after.
Brilliant answer. I read somewhere, I don't know whether this is true, but I'm just going to say it out loud and record it, put it on the internet. That nappies, because obviously out 2 year olds say nappies is a big part of my life. But if Shakespeare had nappies, they'd still be degrading now.
Yes.
And he was knocking around about 300 years ago. So it's
Yeah.
isn't it? Um,
Yeah.
I know. Anyway, a good answer. Perfect. So you talked about adventures and traveling all over the place. Forces Wives Challenge. I want to bring up the Epic Forces Wives Challenge because I love Heather. Did a podcast episode with her before they climbed a volcano. The name escapes me of the volcano, but it was, I think, before the very first challenge. Um, I've loved it ever since. I'm not doing it, no matter what anybody says. You lot keep trying to make me climb Mount Everest, and I'm not doing it. I'm saying it over and over again. But you are now part of Forces Wives Challenge. Tell me about why you got involved, what you do, what they do. Just chat about Forces Wives Challenge.
Yeah, so I am their sustainability lead. So I look at the impact of each of their trips, which is very low impact for it's walking, it's trekking, it's cycling, it's sailing, it's paddle sports. It's very low impact, low carbon trips. But again, it's looking at how we can make those better by this year we're looking particularly at food. So when we do the challenges, where we're sourcing the food from, is there a local caterer we can use as opposed to bringing in food with us, or can we provide a picnic from a local bakery rather than people bringing wrapped up sandwiches from Marks and Spencer's? Am I allowed to say that?
You just did.
Hannah. Um, yeah, so I got involved with them through the sustainability side, and like you said, Heather's amazing. She's really passionate about it. We've been putting information out for every trip. We have a green box that everybody gets, and that's about encouraging car shares, train journeys, where to get your kit from. Which one of my top tips is raid your partner's cupboard, because there's plenty of outdoor kit in there that you can use. My favourites are his camelback, don't tell him, and his thermal trousers for swimming. Again, don't tell him. And we, what else do we do? So and have kit hire, where you can get secondhand kit, that sort of thing. So really thinking about the consumption side of adventures, because it is, I'm the worst. I'm like a kid in a sweet shop every time you take me in an outdoor shop. So yeah, we're just really working hard to make sure that we reduce the impact of each trip.
Yeah. I love Forces Wives Challenge. I particularly love the concept of stealing my husband's kit. He's got one of those softy things, those like jackets. He
Yeah.
calls it softy. That can't be what it's called. It's as ugly as sin. But if you're cold, it's perfect, especially if the boiler's broken, which happens a lot in our house. Living the dream. I'm living the dream wearing my husband's kit. But there must be a use for it. Everybody always teases the Air Force for not ever going away. But they do. They do also have a lot of kit. I feel like I need to say that. Talking about husbands and we won't talk about yours because we don't talk about the serving person on this podcast because they've got their own thing going. They're fine. They don't need the attention. We love them and they're fab, but they've got it covered. What effect has your choice of husband's job had on your career?
Yeah, I think it's well, I wouldn't have met him without my career. Because we met on an explore tour. So so I think I've made a few bad choices along the way. But it's also meant that I've been able to get to what I'm doing now, through essentially when I found the job where I could work from home, and get back into the adventure sector, because I came out of the adventure sector for a few years because there weren't any jobs where we were living. And I don't think that I appreciated how much I was passionate about the adventure and sustainability side until I went away and did something slightly different, still in the travel industry, but more mainstream. And then once I got back into the adventure sector, I really realised that these small businesses that are doing quite amazing things and amazing activities all over the world was where I wanted to be. I think certainly without his support, I wouldn't have been able to do my masters. And yeah, so it has swayed my career. I would probably still be working for Explore if I hadn't met him, because it was such an amazing company to work for. Yeah, it's different path, I think, to what I expected, but a good one.
It is. I find that. So with my career, I often look back and have this very rose-tinted view of when I was working in publishing and life was wonderful and how I missed that. But now I've got to this point. It's taken a long time. It takes a long time when you get that first posting, you're first moving, and or if you're not moving, but that whole military life does flip the table a little bit, and it takes quite a long time to get. It's not even getting back, it's this whole new thing. But actually, it's been one heck of a journey and it was really good fun. There were really awful bad bits. But yeah, I feel like it's good now. It's got good. Just takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, I'd agree. When we moved to Lincolnshire, I thought, oh no, this is me not working. And people were suggesting jobs in high street travel agents, and which is not my thing. Somebody suggested I work in a nursery. It's like, no, you're right. And I at that point I felt like that the like the institution and the people within it, and that's the wrong word, the system thought that any job for a spouse was okay, whereas actually what we wanted was our careers. Um, and yeah, that was when I thought, right, I just got to find somebody who's going to let me work remotely, and I did. So, but I know not everyone's lucky enough for that.
And what would you
But
say to,
setting up your own business is also a really good way of making sure that that doesn't happen to you.
isn't it? It's really hard, but it's a good way to
Yeah.
she gets to move with you. What would you say to somebody who's at the point where they've just had their first posting or they've got to the point where like this is not what I thought my life was going to look like. What would you say to them? If it was you back in the day, what would you say to them?
Um, I think that's quite a hard question now because it's so much easier to get a remote only or a hybrid job that I think people coming into being a new military spouse are in a much better position than probably you or I were. Um, but I would say to them that just know what you love doing, make sure that you don't deviate from that. Like work work your network. So that's essentially what I did. I went to people that I knew and said, look, are there opportunities to be work from home? Yeah, and just keep your contacts up from your old life, and then make sure that you carve out what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, keeping something for you is so important. Um, which leads me really nicely onto because we're kind of getting to the end, and I quite like this question. Talking about your husband's work and moving on to the subject of the MOD, what would you say if we were sat in a room now with policymakers and people high up in the MOD, knowing what you know now, knowing about your career and your business, or even sustainability, what would you say to the MOD if you were sat with them?
Oh, insulate our houses. Give us all a car charger, not just the people that were lucky enough in the in the pilot scheme, because we've got houses here where they're empty. They've got car chargers outside of them, and then there's people in houses with electric cars that don't have a charger. Anyway, that's one that I could go down a big rant about that. I just to be a bit more supportive, I think, to recognise that there is a community of spouses that want a career and want their own business, and that the support is required from the serving spouse in doing that. And if I could get them in the room and talk about sustainability, that would be quite hard, given that the RAF's carbon emissions are quite high. But and I do think that the government are doing more than what we think they are, because they've set themselves the net zero targets. So they are doing things like I joke about the car chargers, but we do have solar street lights around here as well. So they're making those small changes because they know that the big change is pretty difficult. But yeah, I don't know. What would I say to them? Stop flying all your planes. No, no, don't stop flying planes.
I think I think you're so right. I think, well, I'm always banging on about partners, military partners, spouses, because we're so important, and I believe we're so vital to operational effectiveness, to the military. I genuinely do, and you know this because I'm always shouting it from the rooftops. And I think we are so intelligent, and we have so many skills, and we are also quite vocal with our serving partners, that the MOD really needs to listen to us. And I hope that they've listened to you, because the sustainability thing is so important. And maybe maybe we need to get you into a room with them, because we have skills and we have knowledge, and we want to share it, and we have insider knowledge, and we know how the military works in some form or another. But also we can talk to our serving partners, who hopefully have influence as well, that they'll listen to. So there are ways of getting things through. And we are one of the lucky ones that does have a car charger now. You'll be glad to know we have it. We didn't
Well
for an
done.
entire, thank you very much. For an entire year, we didn't have it. And I used to have to drive to the local like supermarket in the middle of the night and sit there charging the car for an hour and a half in the dark as a woman all by herself. So luckily we've got one. But goodness knows what happens when we move next time. But
I
yeah.
know it doesn't go with you, but I was impressed by this because we were on the list for the pilot and we moved house while we were on the list, and it followed us. It wasn't down to the house. So it was us that was on the list, not the house. So we actually got the car charger in the correct house.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And the contractors that did it were fantastic.
Oh yeah, they were great.
I know, efficiency.
Yeah.
So we are at the end. We are at the end. Feel like we've covered anything. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Just thank you for creating the lovely little Milspo network. Well, it's not little anymore, is it? It's huge. And yeah, just being the champion of the Milspo, because we need you. And my lovely branding. Jess did my branding, everyone. You need to know that.
It's always, I say this quite often, it's always the last question I ask if anybody wants to say anything else, as in maybe we've missed something fundamental about saving the world. And they always big me up, and I feel like you were set up, but I haven't paid you anything. Check is not in the post. You just said lovely things. Emily, it's been so fantastic to talk to you. Thank you for opening my eyes a little bit, making me see how I can do things a little bit better. If I want to find you, to connect with you or follow you on your socials, how can I find you?
Okay, so for my sustainable tourism business, I'm mostly on LinkedIn, so I'm just Emily Bailey. And my website is justtourism.co.uk. And we didn't really talk about my walking thing because I'm not really doing it at the moment. But I can't even remember my Instagram. Who knows? I'm on Instagram. Just adventure, I think.
Might chop that bit up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to answer that question again?
Yes. Where can we find you?
Okay, so I'm mainly on LinkedIn for Just Tourism. So I'm just Emily Bailey, and my website is justtourism.co.uk.
Emily, thank you so much for being my guest today. I loved talking to you. You are a brilliant part of Milspo, and just a genuinely nice person. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.